The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty plains of Texas as Jack Morrison walked toward his ranch house, carrying a bucket of fresh milk from the barn. The 60-year-old rancher had seen many sunrises in his 40 years of working the land, but today felt different. Something in the air made him pause and look toward the main road that cut through his property. That's when he saw them. Two small figures walked slowly along the gravel road, their clothes torn and dirty, their steps uncertain. Jack squinted against the morning light and realized they were children, young girls who couldn't be more than 8 and 10 years old. They moved like people who had been walking for days, their shoulders slumped with exhaustion. Jack set down his milk bucket and walked toward the fence that separated his property from the road. As he got closer, he could see that both girls had dark hair matted with dust and faces streaked with tears and grime. The older girl held the hand of the younger one, guiding her forward even though she could barely walk herself. "Hey there," Jack called out gently, not wanting to frighten them. "Are you girls okay?" The older girl looked up at him with eyes that held too much sadness for someone so young. She stopped walking and seemed to consider whether to trust this stranger. The younger girl collapsed to her knees on the gravel, her strength finally giving out. Jack immediately climbed over his fence and approached them carefully. "My name is Jack. I live on this ranch here. You girls look like you need some help." The older girl's voice came out as barely a whisper, hoarse from thirst and crying. "Please, mister. My sister, she's so sick. We haven't eaten in 3 days. Our mama, she's gone." Jack's heart clenched as he looked at these two children who were clearly in desperate need. The younger girl was indeed very pale, her breathing shallow, and she seemed barely conscious. Without hesitation, he scooped her up in his strong arms. "Come on," he said to the older girl. "Let's get you both inside and get some food in you." As they walked toward the ranch house, the older girl, who introduced herself as Maria, began to tell their story between exhausted sobs. She and her sister Rosa had been living in a small trailer on the outskirts of town with their mother, Elena. Their father had left years ago, and their mother worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. "Mama got real sick about 2 weeks ago," Maria explained as they entered Jack's kitchen. "She kept getting worse and worse, but she couldn't afford to see a doctor. She kept saying she just needed a rest, that she'd get better." Jack gently placed Rosa on his couch and immediately went to get her some water. The little girl drank desperately, as if she hadn't seen water in days. He then made both girls some simple soup and bread, watching as they ate like they were starving. "Where's your mother now?" Jack asked gently, though he feared he already knew the answer from the look in Maria's eyes. She died 4 days ago," Maria whispered, fresh tears rolling down her cheeks. "I tried to wake her up, but she wouldn't open her eyes. She was so cold. I didn't know what to do, so I just stayed there with her for a whole day, hoping she'd wake up." Jack felt his throat tighten with emotion. This brave little girl had been trying to take care of her dying sister while dealing with the loss of their mother. He couldn't imagine the fear and loneliness they had experienced. "What happened after that?" he asked softly. "The landlord came to collect rent money," Maria continued. "We saw Mama. He called some people. They said they were going to take Rosa and meet at different places, split us up. I couldn't let them separate us. Mama always told me to take care of Rosa, no matter what. So when they weren't looking, we ran." Jack learned that the two girls had been living on the streets for 3 days, sleeping in abandoned buildings, and searching through garbage cans for food. Maria had been carrying Rosa when her little sister could no longer walk, determined to keep them together despite her own exhaustion. "I heard people talking about how kind ranchers can be," Maria said, looking up at Jack with desperate hope. "I thought maybe if we walked far enough into the country, we might find someone who would help us. Rosa is getting sicker and sicker. I don't think she has much time left." Jack looked at little Rosa, who had fallen asleep on his couch despite her fever. Her breathing was labored, and her skin had an unhealthy pallor that worried him greatly. This child needed medical attention immediately. Maria, honey, we need to get Rosa to a doctor right away, Jack said. She's very sick, and I'm worried about her. But what if they split us up? Maria asked frantically. What if they put us in different homes, and I never see her again? I promised Mama I'd take care of her. Jack knelt down to Maria's level and looked in her eyes. I give you my word that I won't let anyone separate you two. You're sisters, and you belong together. But right now, Rosa needs help that only a doctor can give her. The drive to the hospital was tense. Rosa drifted in and out of consciousness while Maria held her hand tightly. Jack had called ahead, and the emergency room staff was waiting for them. As they rushed Rosa into the treatment area, Jack stayed with Maria in the waiting room, his large, calloused hand resting gently on her small shoulder. Hours passed before a doctor emerged with news. Rosa was severely dehydrated and malnourished, and she had developed pneumonia. The doctor explained that they had gotten her to the hospital just in time. Another day or two without treatment could have been fatal. She's going to be okay, the doctor assured them. But she'll need to stay here for at least a week while we get her strength back up and treat the infection. Maria burst into tears of relief, but Jack could see that her worry wasn't over. What's going to happen to us now? She asked him quietly. Jack had been wondering the same thing. He knew that social services would eventually get involved, and there's a real possibility that the girls would be placed in separate foster homes. The thought of these two sisters being torn apart after everything they had been through made his chest tight with anger and sadness. That evening, as Maria finally fell asleep in a chair next to Rosa's hospital bed, Jack made a decision that would change all their lives forever. He walked to the hospital payphone and called his lawyer, a friend he had known for 20 years. Tom, I need to know about adoption procedures, Jack said without preamble. How quickly can someone become a legal guardian of children who have no other family? His lawyer was surprised by the request, but promised to research the requirements and call him back. Jack spent that night in the hospital, watching over both girls and thinking about what he was considering. He was a 60-year-old bachelor who had never had children of his own. His wife had died of cancer 15 years earlier, and he had devoted himself to his ranch ever since, finding solace in the simple rhythms of caring for his cattle and horses. But seeing Maria's fierce devotion to her little sister and Rosa's fragile innocence had awakened something in Jack's heart that he thought had died with his wife. These girls needed someone to fight for them, someone to make sure they stayed together and had a chance at a real childhood. The next morning, Maria woke up to find Jack sitting quietly nearby, drinking coffee from a hospital cup. "How is she?" were the first words out her mouth. "The doctor says she had a better night," Jack replied. "Her fever broke around 4 in the morning, and she's breathing easier." As if summoned by their conversation, Rosa's eyes fluttered open. She looked around confused for a moment before her gaze landed on Maria. "Maria," she whispered. "I'm right here, baby," Maria said, jumping up to hold her sister's hand. "You're in the hospital, but you're going to be okay." Rosa's eyes found Jack, and she studied his weathered face with the serious expression that only sick children possess. "Are you the nice man who helped us?" "That's right," Jack said gently. "I'm Jack. How are you feeling, sweetheart?" "Tired," Rosa admitted, "but not so cold anymore." It was then that Maria asked the question that Jack had been dreading and anticipating at the same time. "Mr. Jack, what's going to happen to us when Rosa gets better? Are they going to make us leave each other?" Jack took a deep breath and made the decision that had been forming in his heart since he first saw these two brave little girls walking down that dusty road. "Maria, I want to ask you and Rosa something important. How would you feel about coming to live with me on my ranch?" Maria stared at Jack in complete silence for a long moment, as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. Rosa, despite her weakness, struggled to sit up in her hospital bed, her eyes wide with surprise and hope. "You want us to live with you?" Maria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Both of us, together." "That's exactly what I'm saying," Jack replied, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was proposing. "I have a big house on my ranch, plenty of room for 2 little girls. And I could use some help around the place. Oh, nothing too hard for kids your age. Rosa reached out her small hand toward Jack. Would we really get to stay together? Forever? Jack gently took her tiny hand in his much larger one. Forever and always, sweetheart. Sisters should never be separated. But Maria's eyes filled with worry rather than joy. Mr. Jack, that's very kind, but we don't have any money. We can't pay you rent or buy food or anything. We'd just be a burden to you. Jack's heart nearly broke at this 8-year-old girl's concern about being a financial burden. Maria, honey, listen to me carefully. I'm not asking you to pay me anything. I'm asking if you'd like to be my family. Do you understand what I mean by that? Family, Rosa whispered, the word sounding almost magical coming from her lips. That's right. I'd adopt you both legally, which means I'd be your guardian, responsible for taking care of you, making sure you go to school, have clothes and food, and, most importantly, that you're safe and happy. Maria's practical mind immediately went to the potential problems. But what if we're too much trouble? What if Rosa gets sick again? What if we break something expensive? What if you change your mind? Jack pulled a chair closer to Rosa's bed and sat down, looking directly into Maria's eyes. Maria, in all my 60 years on this earth, I've learned that the most important things in life aren't things at all. They're the people you love and who love you back. My wife died 15 years ago, and since then, I've been living alone on that big ranch with just my cattle and horses for company. It's a lonely life. He paused, gathering his thoughts. When I saw you two walking down that road, taking care of each other with such fierce love, it reminded me of what really matters. You wouldn't be a burden to me. You'd be a blessing. Over the next hour, Jack explained his plan. He had already spoken with his lawyer about the adoption process. It would take some time to work through all the legal requirements, but Tom had assured him that since the girls had no other living relatives and were currently wards of the state, a man with Jack's clean record and financial stability would likely be approved. I own my ranch free and clear, Jack told them. I've got money in the bank from 40 years of hard work and careful saving. I can more than afford to raise 2 little girls. The question is, would you want to be raised by an old cowboy like me? Rosa answered immediately. Yes, I want to live on a ranch with horses. But Maria still looked uncertain. Mr. Jack, can I ask you something? Ask me anything, sweetheart. Why do you want to help us? You don't even know us. We could be bad kids or ungrateful or mean. Jack smiled at her serious expression. Well, let me tell you what I've already learned about you, too. Maria, you're the most responsible 8-year-old I've ever met. You kept your sister alive for 3 days on your own when most adults would have given up. You're brave, smart, and loyal. And, Rosa, even when you were sick and scared, you were polite and sweet to a complete stranger. He leaned forward slightly. But more than that, I want to help you because it's the right thing to do. And because I think you could help me too. This old ranch house has been too quiet for too long. It needs the sound of children laughing and playing. A social worker named Mrs. Patterson arrived that afternoon to assess the situation. Jack had been expecting this visit and was prepared for her questions. She was a stern-looking woman in her 50s who had clearly seen too many difficult situations involving children. Mr. Morrison, she began formally, I understand you've expressed interest in taking custody of these children. I have to tell you, this is highly irregular. We typically place children with families who have gone through extensive background checks and preparation. I understand that, ma'am, Jack replied respectfully, and I'm prepared to go through whatever process you require. But I want you to understand something. These girls have been through enough trauma. They need stability and love, and they need to stay together. Mrs. Patterson spent an hour interviewing Jack, asking about his finances, his experience with children, his lifestyle, and his motivations. She then spoke privately with both Maria and Rosa, though she was gentle with Rosa due to her recent illness. When Mrs. Patterson spoke with Maria, the little girl was honest about her fears. I'm scared that if we go with Mr. Jack and then something goes wrong, we'll end up in different places anyway. At least if we go to foster care now, we know what to expect. What do you think about Mr. Morrison? Mrs. Patterson asked. Do you feel safe with him? Maria considered this carefully. Yes, I do feel safe with him. He's been very kind to us, and he saved Rosa's life. But I'm scared to hope for something too good to be true. What if he gets tired of taking care of us? Mrs. Patterson made notes on everything, her expression giving nothing away. After she finished her interviews, she spoke with Jack privately. Mr. Morrison, I have to be honest with you. You have no experience raising children. You're a 60-year-old single man, and you live on an isolated ranch miles from town. These aren't ideal circumstances for placing traumatized children. Jack felt his heart sink, but Mrs. Patterson wasn't finished. However, she continued, I've been doing this job for 25 years, and I've learned to recognize genuine love and commitment when I see it. These girls clearly trust you, and you've shown remarkable compassion by bringing them to the hospital and staying with them. I'm willing to recommend a trial placement with regular check-ins and evaluations. What does that mean exactly? Jack asked. It means that if you're serious about this, we can begin the process. The girls would stay with you temporarily while we complete the necessary paperwork and home study. If everything goes well over the next few months, we can move forward with legal adoption. Jack felt a wave of relief and gratitude. Mrs. Patterson, I give you my word that these girls will be loved and cared for. They'll never want for anything as long as I'm alive. When Mrs. Patterson left, Jack returned to the girls' room to share the news. Maria listened carefully as he explained the trial arrangement. So we could live with you for a few months, and then they'll decide if we can stay permanently, she asked. That's right. It gives you time to see if you really want to live with an old rancher, and it gives me time to prove that I can take good care of you. Rosa, who had been listening quietly, suddenly spoke up. Mr. Jack, what if we don't know how to be good daughters? Mama was sick for so long, and before that, she was always working. We don't know much about having a normal family. Jack's eyes filled with tears at this innocent question. Oh, sweetheart, there's no special way to be good daughters. You just have to be yourselves. And I don't know much about being a father either, so we'll figure it out together. Over the next 3 days, while Rosa continued to recover, Jack began preparing for the girls' arrival at his ranch. He drove into town to buy beds, clothes, toys, and school supplies. He had the spare bedroom painted a cheerful yellow color and set up 2 small beds with matching quilts. He also made arrangements with the local school district. Maria would be entering 3rd grade, and Rosa would start 1st grade once she was fully recovered. Jack hired a part-time housekeeper named Elena, an older Mexican woman whose own children had grown up, to help with cooking and cleaning, especially on days when Jack needed to work cattle. On Rosa's last day in the hospital, Dr. Martinez came to check on her progress. This little girl has made a remarkable recovery, he told Jack. And Maria? Her lungs are clear, she's gained back some weight, and her energy is returning. I think she's ready to go home. Home, Rosa repeated, testing out the word. We're really going home with Mr. Jack. If that's what you want, Jack said, sitting on the edge of her bed. Rosa threw her thin arms around Jack's neck and hugged him tightly. Yes, please. I want to go home with you. Maria watched this exchange with tears in her eyes. For the first time since their mother's death, she allowed herself to believe that maybe everything would be okay. As they prepared to leave the hospital, Jack made one final promise to both girls. I want you to know that no matter what happens, no matter what challenges we face, I will never give up on you. You're my family now, and family doesn't abandon each other. The drive to the ranch was quiet, with both girls pressed against the windows of Jack's pickup truck, staring out at the wide open spaces that would soon be their new home. As they turned onto the long driveway leading to the ranch house, Rosa gasped in wonder. It's so big, she exclaimed, looking at the sprawling house with its wide front porch and surrounding barns and pastures. Wait until you see your room, Jack said with a smile. But as they pulled up to the house, Jack noticed Maria's expression had grown worried again. She was staring at the house with something that looked almost like fear. What's wrong, honey? He asked gently. It's so much bigger and nicer than anywhere we've ever lived, Maria whispered. What if we mess something up? What if we're not good enough for a place like this? Jack turned off the truck and turned to face both girls. Listen to me very carefully. This house is just a building made of wood and stone. What makes it special is the people who live in it. You two are going to make this house a home again, just like it was when my wife was alive. And there's nothing you could do that would make you not good enough. You belong here now. The first night at the ranch was both magical and terrifying for Maria and Rosa. After Jack showed them their room with its cheerful yellow walls and matching beds, the girls sat quietly on one of the beds, overwhelmed by the kindness they were experiencing. It's like a fairy tale, Rosa whispered, running her small hand over the soft quilt. I never imagined having such a pretty room. Maria nodded, but Jack could see the worry still lingering in her eyes. At dinner, which Elena had prepared before leaving for the day, the girls ate carefully, as if they were afraid to make any noise or mess. You know, Jack said gently, this is your home now. You don't have to be so careful. If you spill something or drop something, it's okay. That's what cleaning supplies are for. Over the following weeks, Jack began to understand just how much trauma these girls had experienced. Rosa adapted more quickly, her young spirit bouncing back as she gained weight and strength. She delighted in feeding the chickens with Jack each morning and spent hours watching the horses in the pasture. But Maria struggled with trusting that their new situation was permanent. She hoarded food in her dresser drawer, something Jack discovered when Elena was putting away clean clothes. Instead of confronting Maria about it, Jack quietly asked Elena to always make sure there were snacks available in the kitchen and to tell both girls they were welcome to eat whenever they were hungry. Maria has been the parent for too long, Elena observed wisely. She doesn't know how to be a child again. Jack realized Elena was right when he noticed Maria doing things like staying awake late at night to check on Rosa, or trying to clean the house when she thought no one was looking, or asking permission for everything from getting a glass of water to go into the bathroom. One evening, about 3 weeks after the girls arrived, Jack found Maria sitting on the front porch steps, staring out at the sunset. She looked so small and serious that Jack's heart ached for her. Mind if I join you? He asked. Maria shook her head and made room for him on the steps. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Jack spoke. You know, Maria, I've been thinking about something. You've been taking care of Rosa for a very long time, haven't you? Maria nodded. Since I was little, Mama worked so much, and when she was home, she was usually too tired to do much. Rosa needed someone to watch her. That's a big responsibility for a little girl, Jack said gently. You did an amazing job taking care of your sister. You probably saved her life more than once. Tears began to roll down Maria's cheeks. I tried so hard, but I couldn't save Mama. And I almost lost Rosa too. What kind of big sister does that make me? Jack put his arm around Maria's small shoulders. It makes you the bravest, most loving big sister in the world. Maria, you're just a child yourself. What happened to your mama wasn't your fault, and what almost happened to Rosa wasn't your fault either. You did everything humanly possible. But what if something bad happens again? Maria whispered. What if I can't protect her? What if I can't protect you either? Jack was quiet for a moment, understanding finally dawning on him. Maria, honey, you don't have to protect me. And you don't have to be the only one protecting Rosa anymore. That's my job now. I'm the grown-up, and it's my responsibility to take care of both of you. But what if you can't? What if you get sick like Mama did? What if you change your mind about wanting us? Jack gently turned Maria to face him. Maria, I can't promise that I'll never get sick or that nothing bad will ever happen. Life doesn't come with guarantees like that. But I can promise you that I will never, ever change my mind about loving you. And Rosa, you're my daughters now, in my heart, if not yet on paper, and nothing will ever change that. That night, for the first time since arriving at the ranch, Maria slept through the entire night without waking up to check on Rosa. The girls' first day at their new school was both exciting and nerve-wracking. Jack had enrolled them at the small elementary school in town, and their teacher, Mrs. Henderson, had been briefed on their situation. She was a kind woman in her 40s who had been teaching for 15 years and had experience with children who had faced trauma. Rosa adapted to school quickly, making friends and throwing herself into learning to read. But Maria struggled academically, not because she wasn't smart, but because she had missed so much school while taking care of her mother and sister. Jack hired a tutor to help her catch up, and slowly, her confidence began to grow. 3 months after the girls arrived at the ranch, Mrs. Patterson returned for her follow-up visit. She spent time observing Jack with the girls, interviewing them separately, and inspecting their living conditions. Maria seems much more relaxed than when I last saw her, Mrs. Patterson noted, and Rosa has clearly thrived here. They both seem genuinely happy. They are, Jack confirmed, and they've brought more joy to this old house than I ever imagined possible. There's one concern I need to address, Mrs. Patterson said. Maria mentioned to me that she worries about what will happen to you, and Rosa, if something happens to her. She seems to carry a lot of guilt about not being able to save her mother. Jack nodded. We've been working on that. I've arranged for her to see a counselor in town once a week. Dr. Sarah Williams specializes in children who've experienced trauma. Maria is starting to understand that she's allowed to be a kid again. 6 months after the trial placement began, Jack received the news he had been hoping for. Mrs. Patterson called to tell him that the adoption had been approved. All the paperwork was complete, and a court date had been scheduled to make the adoption official. Jack decided to surprise the girls with the news. That evening at dinner, he seemed unusually excited, and Rosa noticed immediately. Mr. Jack, why are you smiling so big? She asked. Well, I got some very special news today, and I wanted to share it with my 2 favorite girls. Maria looked up from her plate, anxiety flickering across her face. What kind of news? Jack reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out an official-looking envelope. This letter says that if you want, you can officially become Maria Morrison and Rosa Morrison. I can officially adopt you both, which means you'll be my daughters forever, legally and officially. Rosa jumped up from her chair and ran around the table to hug Jack. Really? We get to keep your name? We get to be your real daughters. Really and truly, Jack confirmed, hugging her tightly. But Maria sat frozen in her chair, staring at the letter. Forever, she whispered. Forever and always, Jack said firmly. No one can ever take you away from each other or from me. We're a family now, officially. Maria began to cry, but this time they were tears of pure relief and joy. All the fear and uncertainty she had carried for months finally melted away. The adoption ceremony took place on a sunny Tuesday morning in Judge Thompson's chambers. Maria wore a new blue dress that Jack had bought specially for the occasion, and Rosa wore pink with white flowers. Jack wore his best suit and a tie that Rosa had picked out because it had tiny horses on it. Judge Thompson was a kindly man in his 60s who had presided over many adoptions. He explained the significance of what they were doing and asked each person to state their wishes for the record. Maria, do you understand that Mr. Morrison will become your legal father, with all the responsibilities that entails? Yes, sir, Maria said clearly, and I want him to be my daddy. Rosa, do you want Mr. Morrison to adopt you and become your daddy? Yes, please, Rosa said enthusiastically. I love him very much. Mr. Morrison, do you understand that you are taking on the responsibility of raising these children as your own daughters, providing for them, protecting them, and loving them? I do, Your Honor, Jack said, his voice thick with emotion. It would be the greatest honor of my life. Judge Thompson signed the papers with a flourish. Then, by the power vested in me by the state of Texas, I pronounce you a family. Maria Morrison and Rosa Morrison, meet your father, Jack Morrison. After the ceremony, Jack took his new daughters to their favorite restaurant to celebrate. As they sat in the booth sharing a chocolate cake, Rosa looked up at Jack with chocolate on her chin. Daddy Jack, can I ask you something? Of course, sweetheart. You can ask me anything. Are you happy that we're your daughters now? Jack felt his eyes fill with tears. Rosa, Maria, you two have made me the happiest man in the world. I never imagined that my life could be so full of love and laughter. You've given me the greatest gift possible. You've made me a father. Maria, who had been quiet during most of the celebration, suddenly spoke up. Daddy Jack, I have something I want to tell you. What's that, honey? I love you. And not just because you saved us or gave us a home. I love you because you're the best daddy we could have asked for. You're patient and kind, and you make us feel safe. Thank you for choosing us. Jack had to step away from the table for a moment to compose himself. When he returned, he found both girls grinning at him. Now what are you two smiling about? He asked. We have a surprise for you too, Rosa announced. She reached in her small purse and pulled out a handmade card. We made this for you at school. Jack opened the card to find a drawing of 3 stick figures standing in front of a house. One tall figure labeled Daddy Jack stood next to 2 smaller figures labeled Maria and Rosa. Above the drawing, in Maria's careful handwriting, were the words "Our family," and below it, in Rosa's shakier letters, "We love you, Daddy." That evening, as Jack tucked both girls into their beds, Rosa asked, Daddy Jack, will you tell us the story about how we became a family? Again, Jack asked with a smile. I just told it to you last week. Please, Maria added. I like hearing about how you saw us walking down the road and decided to help us. Jack settled into the chair between their beds and began the story that had become their favorite bedtime tale. Well, it was early morning, and I was walking back from the barn with a bucket of milk. The sun was just coming up, and I saw 2 little girls walking down the dusty road. As he told the story, Jack marveled at how much their lives had changed. What had started as a desperate situation had blossomed into the greatest blessing of his life. These 2 remarkable little girls had not only found a home, they had given him a family and a purpose he never knew he was missing. Years later, when Maria and Rosa were grown women with families of their own, they would still gather at the ranch for holidays and special occasions. They would tell their own children about the day their grandfather Jack Morrison saw 2 frightened little girls on a dusty road and decided to change all their lives forever. The ranch house that had once echoed with loneliness now rang with the sounds of children and grandchildren playing in the same rooms where Maria and Rosa had learned what it meant to be truly loved and safe. Jack's decision to open his heart and home had created a legacy of love that would last for generations. And sometimes on quiet evenings, Jack would sit on his front porch and remember that morning when destiny came walking down his road in the form of 2 little girls who needed a hero, never realizing that they would become his heroes instead.